Okay, I have to lock in for this one because I have a meeting in 35 minutes. And usually it takes me like 45 minutes to film these because I either have to take a bathroom break or I go on a tangent or I just stare into space and zone out for a little bit. So I went back to my roots this month. I used to be the biggest romantasy reader, like in high school. Like I was reading like ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, Strange the Dreamer, Six of Crows, Shadow and Bone. All of those things I was reading kind of as they came out when I was in like when I was in like high school and into early college. Once I got to college, I kind of started branching out into the literary fiction world. You know what's funny is when I was younger, I was like, I can't ever imagine reading like adult fiction. I'm gonna read young adult fiction or young adult fantasy for the rest of my life. And now I'm like, I really can't pick up most of these, even like adult fantasy books, because I'm just like, it just cringes me out. I don't know if it's like, again, the TikTokification of the book industry, but a lot of these books I'm like, oh. Anyway, but because I'm challenging myself to read different genres every month, I went for fantasy this month. So I chose a book that seemed popular, seemed exciting, somewhat of a good plot, something that I would be interested in, had good reviews, and that is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. Quicksilver, like I said, is a book that I saw just like trending, and I was just looking for a fantasy book to get myself into the spirit. I did a mixture of like reading and audio book, mostly because I didn't have a lot of time to read this month. I was traveling a lot, so I used a lot of audiobooks like on planes and stuff, which is crazy with the spice content of this book that I was listening to this in public. Anyway, so let's get into it. So, Quicksilver. Our homegirl is named Saris, and Saris lives in this kind of deserty world, and her city is called Zilvarin, and it's broken up into wards. She lives in the third ward, aka the poorest ward. As per usual, the main character starts in the most desolate of conditions. It's like a desert. Water has to be rationed, and the third ward obviously gets the least amount of rations. They also get kind of the dirtiest water. So Saris is kind of like a thief who smuggles metals mostly, sells them on the black market. She works in a forge with this guy named Elroy, making glassware that she sells. She steals water. Like, she finds a way to survive for her and her brother Hayden because their parents are dead, and she just wants to be able to survive and to have her brother survive. So one day, this is the inciting incident, she steals the arm guard of one of the queen's guards, which is a gold-plated, like, super fancy armor, but obviously big treason, because now she's not only like stolen something, but she's stolen from the queen, technically. And this queen is a queen that no one really knows. So this realm is human. Like, Saris and Hayden are humans. Everyone here is human, but for some reason, their queen has been alive for like 1,000+ years, and they don't know how. No one knows how she's been alive, but she has been alive. So she's a formidable force. No one ever sees her. No one ever talks to her. She's scary. So now Saris has done high treason by stealing this armor, and she gets chased around everywhere. And she knows that the only place that she can sell this piece of armor is on the black market. So she goes looking for another black market thief named Carrion Swift, a rugged and handsome and charming and lovable boy who everyone falls in love with and all the girls swoon over, and Saris just so happened to sleep with him one time, but she would never sleep with him again because like he's so beneath me. Classic. She goes looking for Carrion because she's like, Carrion, I need your help. I need to be able to sell this because this is going to save me and my brother. It's going to get us so much money, so much water rations, etc. And while she's talking to Carrion inside this pub, she leaves her brother outside with the armor because she doesn't want to be separated from the armor. So she brings her brother along and she just tells him, wait outside. She goes back outside with Carrion. Hayden's gone. She's like, where the fuck did Hayden go? She recognizes that he probably went home. She hears screams. She gets home. She sees that Hayden is surrounded by a bunch of the queen's guards who are ready to take Hayden to the palace for who knows what, probably torture, probably death. only bad things, basically. Ceres has none of it. She admits the truth and she gives herself up to save her brother. So Ceres gets taken to the palace. So once she's in the palace, like this eternal queen, Queen Madra, kind of like toys with her and is like, Ceres, because of your infraction, I'm gonna kill everybody in the third ward and just rid them of the plague, let them know what happens if insurrection happens. And Ceres is obviously like, what? No, please don't do that. And there's seemingly no stopping Madra, which is crazy. So she has her guard go to kill Ceres because she says that, okay, fine, you give up your life and I'll save the third ward. And she's like, yes, okay, you can kill me. And then she's going to kill Ceres and she's like, just kidding, I'm gonna kill them anyway. So then Ceres knows she's dying and knows everyone else she loves and cares for and the innocent is dying. In the thralls of death, she's fighting this guard, or this captain of the guard. They're fighting. He stabs her, she goes down. There's like this sword stuck in metal in the middle of the room, and it seems like that's her only chance, even if not to like fight back, to at least kill him and like get revenge for him killing her. I don't really know. So she grabs the sword and she pulls it out and she kills this guy. But when she pulls it out of the ground like turns liquid and a figure comes out of this silvery liquid, aka quicksilver, comes out of the liquid, and all of a sudden she thinks it's a figure of death with dark hair who's really handsome, and death picks her up and takes her through the silver. That's kind of the setup. You would be surprised how long this section actually took. I actually started the book on an audiobook and I was running a half marathon, subtle flex. I would say it took 11 miles for all of this to occur with my book on 2 times speed. And I was like, oh, we are just now getting to the Fae realm. Because at first I was like, what is this book about? Like, they're all human. They're all, I don't really understand like where the magic comes in. Maybe she's gonna like discover powers or something. It took a while for us to get past the human world. So enter the Fae world. Ceres wakes up. She's like, where am I? I don't know this place. Beautiful woman is sitting next to her, but this woman has like pointed ears and is singing so beautiful, and she's offering her lots of water and food, and she's like, what is this place? I'm in a palace, but I'm not in Madra's palace. So this woman who's near her kind of tells her that, oh girl, you're in the Fae realm. And Ceres is like, Fae aren't real. And this girl's like, yeah, they are, obviously, literally me. But you traveled through a portal, aka the quicksilver, to get here. Quicksilver hasn't been awakened in thousands of years. How did you do it? And Ceres is like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. She also meets Renfis, who is the general to the king of the Fae. His name is Belicon. A lot of names here. And she learns that this girl next to her name is Everlane. She's actually princess to Belicon, so like she's Belicon's daughter. And then she also eventually meets Kingfisher. Now, if you're someone who likes your brooding alpha Fae male type, Kingfisher's for you. 100%. 100%. The audiobook kind of made me not like him, but everything he was saying I liked. Anyway, that's on a different tangent here. So she meets Kingfisher and she basically learns that Kingfisher is the guy that she thought was Death, who actually came to save her. Sorry, I got a lash perm yesterday and I'm not supposed to clean my eyes for 24 hours, but there's like still some glue and it's really bothering me. So she learns that Kingfisher was actually the guy that she thought was Death who saved her. And he's kind of wild and he's untamed and he's really hurting. And she's like, what's wrong with him? And they're like, oh, well, he gave you his protector thingy to go through the quicksilver to save you. So like he's going crazy with all the quicksilver in him because it like speaks, it has voices. Sure, okay, I'm on board. So then Ceres and Everlane go in front of the king, and the king is basically like, you're the first human to come here in hundreds and hundreds of years. we want to know how you got here, because if you awaken the quicksilver, you must be an alchemist, which they haven't seen in centuries. And they're like, how did you do this? And she's like, I don't know, I'm a human. They're like, obviously you're a human, but you must have powers. And she's like, I don't know, bro. I'm from the third ward. I don't know what to tell you. So basically, Bellicon gives her a deal. And if she helps them learn how to harness the quicksilver or go through the quicksilver safely, then he'll let her live. And also, he hates Kingfisher, but we learn later that he's like not Kingfisher. We learn that Bellicon later is like not a good guy, and he's also Fisher's stepdad. Such a random point in the novel. I don't really get why that was added in, but maybe it'll come back in books 2 or 3. Bellicon hates Kingfisher because he calls him a traitor for this burning of a city that supposedly happened. He's supposedly been banished for hundreds of years, and he says that the only reason he'll keep Kingfisher alive is because he's been missing for hundreds of years, and he'll put him back to the front of the war front lines. So he's like, you'll basically be a sacrifice because you're a good fighter, so I'm not going to bother executing you here. I'm just going to put you in the front line, so hopefully you can kill some enemies on the way. And while we're at it, because you're not going to war for another couple weeks, you're going to help Ceres learn how to use Quicksilver because you somehow have something that connects to the Quicksilver, and you can teach her about the magic of the realm. There's a lot of information we're already taking in. There's a lot of world building we're already taking in. We're talking the properties of Quicksilver. We're talking the properties of how different magic. We're talking court politics. We're talking different realms. It's a lot. There's a lot going on. I don't get it all, but I'm still reading. Kingfisher and Ceres have to work on figuring out how to harness the Quicksilver together. Of course they don't get along. Of course they're brooding and fighting, and they're both hot-headed and not even-tempered, and they always clash, and it's kind of hot and sexy that they never get along, and it just seems like sparks are always kindling between them. So like they bicker a lot and they don't get along, and there's a lot of like sexual tension and a lot of like tricks that they use for each other. Like, for example, Ceres, supposedly Kingfisher can like hear her heartbeat, so he knows that she's like, her heart's beating quickly when he's around, so then he uses that to his advantage. They like start making out, but then it turns out later that Ceres knew what she was doing, stole one of Kingfisher's rings because she thought it was one of those relics that let people pass through the Quicksilver safely, and she was going to use it to go back home. Kingfisher catches her and is like, you're stupid, that's not a relic. If you jumped in the Quicksilver, you would have died. And so he decides to make her a deal. He says, I will go back through the Quicksilver with my relic, get your brother, and come back if you promise to do anything I say. And she's like, fine, I'll do it. He's like, great. Deal's a deal. What she doesn't know is she is now oath-bound to him. Of course she's oath-bound to him. Kingfisher goes through this Quicksilver and brings back Carrion. Because when he went sniffing for Ceres, he found Ceres on Carrion, who she slept with, instead of finding her brother. Right, naturally. Kingfisher brings Carrion through the portal. So now, not only does she have to deal with like, oh my god, I'm now oath-bound to this guy, but he has not brought her brother, but he has technically fulfilled his part of the oath because he said, I will go and try to bring back your brother. And he did. Like, he genuinely tried. He did think that that was her brother. And it just wasn't. So Kingfisher, on the day that he has to leave, brings Ceres and Carrion now and compels them to leave the palace, like escape from Bellicon and go to the front lines with him, because he has a secret other motive that he wants Ceres to build these like silver relics that help him go through the Quicksilver. He wants her to make those for his friends and soldiers on the front line, who he hasn't seen in hundreds of years because he's been disappeared for hundreds of years and no one knows why. So then Kingfisher gets Ceres again to make another oath where she will help him make as many relics as he wants, and he will let her go back home. That's the deal that they made. But then it turns out the number of relics he wants is in the thousands, and she barely has control of the quicksilver at this point. So she's like, this is going to take forever. So her and Carrion now is, you know, the lovable, charming, funny, witty friend, is now helping her try to figure out how to do this, because he's also like, I want to go home too, bro. Like, they took me in the night, you know? They took me. So Renfis is also with them, because again, he's the general, so he's at the front lines. And he really is like, guys, can we all get along? And he's trying to get Kingfisher and Ceres to get along, so he tries to get them to like have dinner, but they just can't stop fighting. And they're in the middle of a fight at dinner when a freaking vampire feeder jumps through the window. We have not been introduced to this yet. Again, a lot of information for book 1. It's like a vampire. It wants to suck on the blood, but it doesn't seem to like have a soul or a conscience or really any thought other than to feed, which is why they called them feeders. Turns out that this war that's going on is between the Fae and the vampire realm. And where they are is right on the border of this. And the border is split by a river. And usually the feeders don't cross the river. They don't like water or something. And the Fae can only use their magic once they cross the border. So if the river's frozen over, the feeders try to cross, then they can attack. Border war that just keeps happening, where they're just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, seems to have been going on for a very, very, very long time. This is where she learns that Kingfisher was missing for hundreds of years, because everyone else at camp is like, where have you been? You abandoned us, you traitor. And he's like, I'm sorry, guys, but I can't talk about it. And everyone's like, why? Give us a reason. He's like, sorry, I can't talk about it. Yeah, they're calling him traitors. One of the other leaders of the army tries to attack Kingfisher with her sword, but Ceres, stop, has one of those moments like Carrie, and shatters this girl's blade into a bajillion pieces, which shouldn't be able to happen. So then they're like, oh shit, not only is Ceres an alchemist, but she is the most powerful alchemist we've ever seen. So eventually they're at this camp. Ceres is now not only tasked with making these relics for everybody, she still doesn't know how to do it, but she also has to fix this girl's blade, because this girl's mad. This girl's mad. So eventually, you know, she gets to the softy-hearted Kingfisher, and they make love. And super freaking awesome and cool. And they seem to both have a really good time. And then all of a sudden, they're like friends with benefits. I don't know. It moves really quickly from enemies to lovers. Do you know what I mean? Like, one second they hate each other, the next second they're like only being soft with each other. Maybe it's because like they aren't really enemies. They're not really fighting against a cause together. Like, they just bicker. So it's not really enemies. It's more of like annoyances to lovers, if that makes sense. Whatever. But so when they're hooking up, Ceres gets this sick tattoo, and Kingfisher won't tell her what it is or what it means. Cool. Ceres and Carrion now have to fix Danya, which is the name of the girl whose sword she broke. They have to fix her sword along with making the relics. So it's gonna take for freaking ever. And then there's another guy named Lorith, who is another of the warriors. And Lorith kind of reveals to Ceres that Kingfisher saved him from death by giving him part of his soul. So he's like oath bound to him as like a blood brother. And it's really sweet. And Ceres is like learning that Kingfisher is really brave and really selfless and really wants to look after the people and his friends and his comrades. And he's not a bad guy. And this thing that they keep lobbing at him, this traitor thing, this burned city, she still doesn't know what that's about, but she knows that there's probably more to the story than just him being a ruthless traitor. Fisher then takes Ceres to his hometown, next town over, away from like the army camp, but in town. They spend the night together. He ends up having like a seizure in the middle of the night because he has quicksilver in his body for some reason, and it won't leave, and it's slowly like driving him crazy and making him mad, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse over time. So to distract him, she tells him about her family growing up, like her mom and her dad and her family history, and about Hayden. And she talks about her childhood and how hard it was. Kingfisher had told Saris about his mom the day before, about how his mom was an oracle and how he loved her and how awesome she was and how she really died too young. And during this kind of like emotional heart to heart, she ends up with more tattoos on her hands this time. And Fisher kind of magics them back to him. And he basically tells her, like, you don't have to claim them. You have to decide if you want these marks, but she doesn't really know what the marks are. But he's basically like, I don't want this decision to be taken from you. So like, you have a month to decide if you want them. And she's like, okay, that's kind of weird. So Saris remakes Danya's sword after she figures out she has to kind of talk to the quicksilver, make a deal with it if it wants to bind to something to work. So that's how she finally kind of figures out the quicksilver. And so it wants a song. Lorith ends up giving it a song about Kingfisher's victory at this one city. So the sword and the quicksilver end up claiming Lorith and not Danya, and she is pissed. Because not only is it a remade sword from her pieces, it is a god sword, which they haven't seen in centuries made new, because nothing has been god sworded, I guess, since an alchemist has existed. So now Lorith has a god sword and Danya's fucking pissed. And Saris, as she's falling more and more for Kingfisher, tries to, now that she knows how the quicksilver works, she's now trying to coerce the quicksilver out of Kingfisher, but it basically says, like, we're a part of him, we're tied to him, we can't ever leave. And Kingfisher's like, yeah, it's gonna get worse and I'm gonna die eventually. And Saris is like, no, there has to be another way. The vampires attack again, naturally. And the team realizes that Malcolm, which is the king of the vampires, has taken Everlane, aka Kingfisher's stepsister, aka Saris's friend, has taken her and bitten her, which means that she will transform into a vampire. They don't want that. They don't want that. And they kind of realize it's a trap, but basically they realize, like, Malcolm wants an audience with them and Everlane is kind of the bait to get them to her. And he wants Saris to be his alchemist. Of course he does, because everyone's hearing about this alchemist of all time. They want her bad. So they try to make a plan of how to sever Everlane's bond with Malcolm before they can rescue her. And a bond has never been severed before. So they're like, we don't know how to do this. Maybe we'll get some healers. They bring in a healer. And Saris notices some funny tattoos on this healer's hands. And she's like, oh, what are those? And the healer's like, oh, these are the tattoos me and my husband got when we got married. They're like an old fable of what these like mating bonds used to be that apparently used to appear on people's skin when they were like true mates. So now we just get them tattooed on as tradition that we are claiming each other. And Saris is like, oh, that's what those are. Really interesting. And she goes to Kingfisher and she's like, I just heard a really funny story about what those tattoos on my hand were. And he's like, oh, yeah, so like, yeah, we're mates.
Oh my!
But I wanted to give you the option to decide, which honestly, respect that he's letting a woman choose whether or not she wants to be his mate. But then they also have this other tattoo around their wrist that the healer's like, oh yeah, these are like, they're called god bindings. When the gods look favorably or choose a pair that they think is destined to be together. But those haven't happened. Those are just fiction. The mating bonds, at least, were something that used to happen in the past and happen way less frequently now, but the god bindings were all fiction. And Saris is like, oh, like these. Oh, like these on my wrist. So now she's like, okay, me and Fisher are mated and god bound. That's okay. There's a lot to like accept. So Fisher makes like a really romantic evening with candles and stuff, and while they're making love, he accepts the mating bond, but Saris doesn't quite yet because she's like, I still don't really understand what this is. And he ends up telling her more about his mom, that his mom was actually an oracle who foresaw Saris coming in the future for Kingfisher and had told him about it and had drawn pictures of her, and all the pictures were exactly her image, except she was Fae in the pictures, but she's human in this version. So his mom knew that his mate and his god-bound partner were coming, and he knew the second he saw Saris who she was, but he wanted to give her the chance to choose for herself. I like that. I like that. I appreciate the independence that you're giving Kingfisher. And he tells her he's in love with her. So they're finally saying, I love you. And Sarah says she loves him back, but she hasn't accepted their mating bond, basically. She wakes up the next morning and Fisher's gone and only left a note. The note basically says, like, I'm really sorry. I have to do this. I release you of your oath to do anything that I say or to do the making relics and stuff. You're free to choose your own life. I'm sorry. And she's like, what did he do? What is he doing? She's freaking pissed, obviously, but also because they had a plan to save Everlane and she just knows that he went to go save her by himself in the middle of the night. And she's like, we had a plan. So they're trying to figure out now as a team, like, how do we get over there to now save Kingfisher and Everlane? When a portal opens and Everlane falls through and Saris and Carrion are like, we have to go through. So they immediately go through the portal because they're like, this is how we get there. Everlane is back in camp. Lorith, Saris, and Carrion go to Malcolm's court. So there they find Malcolm, Bellicon, and Madra all working together. Really interesting when Malcolm and Bellicon are supposed to be in war with each other, and Madra is not even supposed to be able to access them because she's from a completely different realm. Really interesting how this is all working out. And they are holding Kingfisher. So Bellicon releases Kingfisher from his oath that he apparently has, and Kingfisher is now finally able to tell the troop where he was all of the past hundreds and hundreds of years. And Bellicon is kind of letting him tell them because he wants to put on a show. He wants to make it dramatic. He's like, oh, before I kill you, I want you to tell them all what you did. And so Kingfisher tells them about how hundreds of years ago, there was a city and he made a deal basically with Malcolm and Bellicon to save the city. The way that they were deciding upon this was they were going to flip a coin. I don't remember. They were going to flip a coin. When the coin landed, either like Kingfisher was free to, I don't even remember like what the stipulation was when the coin landed, other than before the coin landed. I don't remember at this point now. It involved flipping a coin, and Kingfisher couldn't hurt Bellicon, Malcolm, or Madra before the coin hit the ground. That's the main part that I remembered. So Kingfisher's like, yeah, I'll partake in that deal. Flip the coin. Malcolm snatches it out of the air, so the coin never hits the ground. Kingfisher can't fight Malcolm or Bellicon now because he's oath-bound, and Malcolm releases his feeders on this city. And there's so many feeders that they outnumber people. There's no way to stop them. Like, there's so many that the army's outnumbered. So Kingfisher makes the decision that because all these people are going to turn into feeders anyway, he burns the whole city down, basically to stop further damage of the realm. What he didn't know is that until the coin reaches the ground, the souls of the dead also won't be released. So these souls have been sitting in agony for the past however many hundreds of years that Fisher has been gone. And where Fisher has been is Malcolm was like, I'm gonna hide this coin in a labyrinth. If you wanna save these souls, you gotta go fetch. So Kingfisher has spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years going through this labyrinth where he didn't have to eat, drink, or sleep because Malcolm was like, you're gonna stay awake the whole time. You're gonna be slightly hungry the whole time. You're gonna be slightly thirsty the whole time, but you're gonna get nothing except search for this coin. And that's where he has been for the past hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, is trying to find this coin until Saris awakened the quicksilver, which he then went through. A lot of information in the last quarter of the book, guys. There's a lot going on. So the team, after hearing all of this, they attack, get Kingfisher out, and they run through the maze. Saris is like attuned with the quicksilver now, so she's trying to guide them to the quicksilver pool, try to find this coin. Malcolm and Bellicon find them. Carrion baits Malcolm with his charming wit into biting him by like being an asshole. And when Malcolm bites him, Malcolm starts suffering. And everyone's like, what's going on? And Carrion's like, yeah, I'm actually not human. I am actually of the Dianthus heir line, aka true heir to the throne of Avelia, aka the Fae realm that Bellicon is sitting as a false king on, and my father's blood is the blood that turned Malcolm into a vampire, so if he drinks from us, he is poisoned. Boom. Again, a lot of information in the ending here. So Ceres goes running back through the maze. She's trying to find this coin, and she's trying to make a deal with the Quicksilver, be like, tell me where you are, and I will give you something. And they're like, oh, really? And she ends up accepting her mating bond through this, and she finds a coin. Malcolm finds her. He's like kind of dying, but he's not dead. He finds her and he still fights Ceres to get the coin, but Ceres eventually gets the coin to the ground, but not before Malcolm has like punched a hole in her stomach. So she's now dying, but now Malcolm is dead because Ceres has killed him. So she's gonna die. And now we're getting to the end of the book when Teladaeus, who is Malcolm's like right-hand man, basically we also find out is like best friends to Fisher through all of this. He is basically like, the only way to save her is to turn her into a vampire. And Kingfisher's like, I don't know, like, no, I can't. And he's like, that's the only way to save her. And Kingfisher's like, fine, do it. So Teladaeus turns her into a vampire to save her. But while she's in this kind of like purgatory, the Quicksilver calls in its favor and basically transports her to this meadow where there's these two little girls and there's a guy. And she realizes the two little girls are the sun goddesses, and the guy is the god of chaos, Zareth, who turns out has Kingfisher as his champion. And she's like, wait, am I talking to the real gods? And they're like, yeah, we are the real gods. This is not a dream. Like, we brought you here. We wanted an audience with you. So Zareth has been waiting for an alchemist like her to kind of restore balance in the universe, because he shows her that there is basically this rot that is spreading throughout different realms. And like, his example is this tree. Some of the leaves are rotting, and he's like, each leaf is a different realm. Half these branches are already gone. You have to stop the rot. And he's like, in all the outcomes I've looked at, the entire universe ends, but not every outcome. And he's like, I'm willing to take a chance on that. And that means I need to keep you and Kingfisher together, because the only possible outcomes I saw with even a little bit of a chance, you and Kingfisher were together. So I am going to claim you as my chosen, put you in my favor, but that means you will be ripped from the threads of the universe. The gods will not be able to interfere in your life anymore, which is a good thing because some people want you guys to die and just start the universe over again. But it's also a bad thing because that means I can't help you. And I can't see the future beyond this point. Do you accept? And Ceres is like, yeah. And he's like, and everything will change. You will change. Do you accept? And she's like, yeah, I accept. So Ceres wakes up and she's like, I am feeling different. And they're like, yeah, girl. Not only are you half vampire, but you are also half fae now, because that's what the god turned you into. So Ceres is this whole new kind of half-blood type thing. So already she's like, what? Where am I? What's going on? Not only that, she learns that Carrion is the true heir to the fae throne. Madra and Belicon fled. And that because she killed Malcolm, the vampires want to crown her queen. And that is where book 1 of Quicksilver ends. That was like a whole 40 minutes of me just explaining the plot of this book. And that's kind of what it felt like reading it too. It felt like a full, yeah. It felt like there was so much going on. Not in necessarily a bad way, but there's a lot. There's a lot to take in. And of course, that comes with like world building and fantasy and stuff. But oh my God, there's a lot of talk about like fate versus will, especially in Ceres and Kingfisher being destined to be mates and lovers, but then also Kingfisher giving her the choice to choose. And then there's also fate versus will of whether or not Ceres wants to participate in the gods' plans. There's fate versus will even in the oaths that they keep making to each other and within each other. How does independence and autonomy and agency present itself? And that's actually one of the things I really liked about this book, is that Kingfisher especially never made Ceres do anything she didn't want to do. There was like 1 or 2 times where he compelled her to do something with like their oath, but she told him if he compels her ever again, she will never forgive him. And he never once compelled her again or made her do something that she didn't want to do. So I really like that. I also really like that it was fast paced. I mean, I know I told you there was a lot happening, but it didn't feel like too much at once most of the time. It seemed pretty well developed. This world, I was able to kind of envision it clearly. what the rules of the world were took a little bit of time, but I think I understand them now. Everything that was mentioned earlier came back in some way. If not in this book, then definitely the second book, which I'm almost done with also. I like that Sarah isn't always like a down on her luck, damsel in distress kind of girl. Like a lot of her plot development is very separate from Kingfisher, like including the activation of her gifts that happens without him. How she figured them out happens without him. How she eventually becomes the most powerful alchemist happens without Kingfisher. And it's really refreshing to see, even though they are like these mates who are destined to be together, who are in love, her development and her craft does not depend on his teaching her or him being there or him giving her something. All of it kind of happened on her own, almost to the point that other than Kingfisher bringing her through the quicksilver, most of that stuff would have happened without him anyway. Even though Kingfisher was a dick to Saris, he wasn't like the stereotypical, like, I'm a brooding bad boy, I'm so bad and everyone's scared of me and blah blah blah. Like, no, like he was well loved by his friends, well loved by his family. He was already altruistic and brave, and like, again, Saris didn't need to be there to bring this out of him. They enhance each other, but they don't make each other, if that makes sense, which is my beef with a lot of like these fantasy novels. Is it seems like a lot of times they need the other person in order to learn a very specific lesson to their character development, whereas they can instead be separate people who learn things but always come back together. But also, it doesn't make sense to me how, as a genius, as like, he's supposed to be like the greatest general of all time, amazing, most powerful magic wielder, blah 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 blah, how did he get caught in such a stupid loophole with this coin? I don't understand that. And maybe he's had hundreds and hundreds of years to think about it, and that's why he's teaching Saris, like, be careful when you make an oath and like that sort of thing. But I'm like, would he realistically be caught in something like that? I don't know. That didn't seem super clear to me. Maybe I just have to like go back and reread it, but on first impression, not super clear. And then the last thing that I kind of liked was like the spicy scenes weren't too cringe. Thank God, because sometimes they are so cringe that I can't listen to them without being like, why are we using this terminology? We are all adults here. Please stop saying that. Like, just be normal. Just be normal. And this one felt normal. And it felt like, yeah, there were moments that were kind of cringe, but for the most part, it was very tastefully done. And it was nice and romantic and sexy and awesome and cool. And a little bit too much in the second book. Like, it seems like it's happening every other page, but that's a separate book, you know? What I didn't like. I don't think romantasy is my preferred genre still. And a lot of that comes with some of these things that I didn't like here. I hate when a nickname is overused. I thought like Kingfisher calling Saris Osha, once we found out the reason, like that, oh, that's cute. But he literally calls her that all the time. And I know it comes back later. I know it comes back later when we learn about the importance of names in the realm and like how you only give your real name to the person you marry. I don't know. I wish that there was some like variation, even if it was just a different nickname, if he didn't want to say her name right away. I get it. I get the impact of when he finally says Saris and she's like, oh my God, he's never said my name before. But it bothered me so much. And also saying my mate. My mate. I'm like, I get it. He's your mate. I get it. She's your mate. And they made such a point of it, especially like in the beginning of the second book. Sorry, I'm going on to the second book, but like beginning of the second book, where Carrion keeps calling Saris Kingfisher's girlfriend, and Kingfisher's like, she's not my girlfriend, she's my mate. It's like, okay, but she's also your girlfriend. Like, come on, let's be so real, right? Let's be so for real right now, please. Another thing, I don't get how Malcolm died, because there was a whole thing where Kingfisher goes, spoiler, well, if you're already here, you're way past the spoilers. There's a whole point where Kingfisher cuts off Belicon's head, but he lives because there was a whole thing about the triumvirate of Madra, Belicon, and Malcolm. All three have to die for them to die. They literally made that point, and then in the next scene, Malcolm dies. And I literally went through Reddit because I was like, how is this possible? Apparently, it's the poison that Carrion gave him that like pushed him over the edge. But I'm still like, that wasn't super clear to me, and it feels like a lot of other people were confused, considering there were many Reddit threads like, how did Malcolm die, if they literally said that one of the triumvirate couldn't die without the other two. Sure, whatever. We'll push it to the side. I didn't like how much was revealed in the last quarter of the book. Like, I swear to God, the last quarter of the book. I mean, you heard my synopsis. Literally from the point that from when Malcolm kidnaps Everlane onward, that was the last quarter of the book. Everything else before that, so well paced. The last quarter, why are we getting the entirety of Evelian and Sanis Rothian, which is the vampires? Why are we getting their whole history? Why are we getting all of Fisher's history? Like, literally within 60 to 80 pages, all of this is coming out. And then we have Cerys going to meet the gods. So then that's a whole other layer we have to learn about. And then Cerys wakes up half fae, half vampire, but that's not the end of it, because now there's a couple days still in her life where she's figuring out what she is. I'm like, wow. It's just a lot to take in at one time. And I feel like I get too heated about this. Another thing, why do the villains always hash out their entire plan before they attack or kill? It makes no sense to me that when Bellicon, Madra, and Malcolm had Kingfisher, they didn't just kill him. They literally had him alone and chained up. Maybe, okay, you wanted Cerys. You could have killed Kingfisher, said she was still alive to lure her to you. But no, Bellicon releases Kingfisher from his oath to have him explain the whole history of why they're beefing. I know why the information was necessary. I know why the exposition was necessary, but I'm like, I don't know how I would do it differently either, so I feel bad for even like describing it as such. Or it doesn't feel like a critique, it feels like criticism. Another thing, why does Malcolm call Kingfisher my love? That never comes back. That never comes back. I am almost done with book 2, and that never comes back. Are we supposed to believe that like while he was in this kind of like labyrinthy prison that he also was like a sex slave to Malcolm? Like, I genuinely have no idea what she means by Malcolm calling Kingfisher my love. Another thing, they figure out a major plot point that was like one of the major plot points, aka Kingfisher is gonna die from the quicksilver in his blood. They figure out how to heal him off page. What? You're gonna tell me that Cerys spends so long trying to figure out how to heal the quicksilver from Kingfisher, and he's been trying to heal himself from the quicksilver for so long, and they're just gonna do it off page while Cerys is passed out? What? Like, what? I wanna know. It felt really like, okay, we just need to tie it up in a neat little bow and done. I don't know. Another thing, we bring in a physical manifestation of the gods. And the gods are kind of a theme throughout the entire book, but we see them in their physical form in the last little bit there when Cerys is invited to an audience with them. I don't know if it was necessary. It kind of felt out of place, even in a magical world like the one that we're discovering. It felt really weird and out of place. Didn't feel like it was in the same story necessarily. I don't know. It didn't bother me as much as it seemed to bother other people. And the last thing I'll say is, as with most of these fantasy romantasy books, it was just tropes on tropes on tropes on tropes on tropes on tropes. And I get it that that's like the blueprint of how a lot of these books are written, how a lot of these books are made, how a lot of even like movies and TV and plays, what do they say? They say like there's only 7 original stories in the world. I get it. It's not, and I'm not saying anything I write is beyond being trope after trope after trope after trope. It kind of reminds me of like Commedia dell'arte, where there are stock characters, or like even the Greek comedies and things like that, how there's always you can always find the same characters because that's how they used to write. They used to take these stock characters and put them in different situations. That's kind of how this feels, or how this genre has started to feel, at least in like the last 15 years of publishing. A lot of these have started to feel like taking these stock characters and implementing them in different books and in different plot lines with different like variations of what's happening. That's just like something that I've been thinking about a lot, because I'm like, it's not that I necessarily mind the tropes. I don't know why it bothers me to point them out so much when that's literally what storytelling is. And it's something that obviously humans have done for centuries on centuries on centuries. I don't know. What if Kingfisher was like really nice? And like, what if he was just a golden retriever? It would have been different. It would have been different. Overall, like I said, I'm literally reading the second book, so obviously I must have liked it enough to continue the story. And the third book doesn't even come out until this November, which honestly is like soon enough that I'll hopefully remember what's happening. It was a good read for what it was, and it was good to get me a little bit out of like my literary fiction heavy thinking books and into just something that was fun, that was fast-paced and sexy and cute, and I had to like kind of put myself into the world of, and it was like a nice escape low-key when I was on a plane or when I was in a car or walking my neighbor's dog. It was just something fun to listen to. So I didn't hate it. I quite liked it. It's not my favorite book in the world, but as we saw with my Fourth Wing review as well, these aren't my favorite books in the world, but they're also something that I will come back to again and again. And I'm just like, I am no better. I am no better. I have no reason to be talking down about these books because I am no better. I am paying for the second book. I had a good time, and that's all it has to be. Reading should be fun so that you keep reading. And then sometimes you pull nuggets of information and lessons learned or character traits or even like ways of speaking or ways of acting. Like, I'm not gonna lie, when I think about, I do a lot of stage combat, like a lot of sword fighting, and I still think about like Arya from Game of Thrones. I still think about Throne of Glass. There are things you pick up from every book you read, even if it isn't your favorite in the world, that become part of you and what you do. And it's kind of like friendships or people that you meet. You're always going to learn a lesson, whether you think it or not. But yeah, that was my very, very, very lengthy, less review and more just retelling of Quicksilver by Callie Hart. If you guys have recommendations of other books like this, or that you think that I would like based on what I didn't like about this book, please leave them below. And if you have any suggestions of what I should read next, what I haven't already read in 2026, leave them below as well. And bye.